Hello, this is Jamie Lindow with Trachte Building Systems. Today we're going to talk about a new type of product that we are building all across the country, and that is an outside access climate controlled unit. A lot of people are scared about building this. In many areas it does not even exist, but in my opinion it is one of the neater type of products you can build to differentiate your site compared to everyone else's. And by doing that, you can compete from today and to the future. Number one, a lot of the large REITs that are out there are building 3-story type mini storage buildings where they don't have easily accessible outside units. American people like convenience, especially if you're in a wealthy area. People will spend the money to minimize the amount of work and problems they will have. And this is especially helpful for anyone moving their entire house from one location to another. And if they do that, they're going to want the biggest unit possible, and they're going to want a climate control because they're scared about how much work and effort it's going to take to get all their items into a unit. The building behind me is a very large building. It's 125 by 150, and he wanted to maximize the land area, and he wanted outside access units as large as possible and as tall as possible because he knows he already has a demand. There is already 2 buildings like this built on the site, and this is actually the largest one with the largest units. So we'll get started talking about each one of the details. This site is in Wisconsin, which is in zone 6 of the coolness of the United States. And here, what you're looking on the roof insulation is what's called a long tab banded roof. So we fill the entire purlin cavity with insulation. There is a total of 14 inches of insulation here. You don't lose heat going up through the roof. How in the front do I make sure we don't lose it around the door jambs? I spray foam the door jambs and the headers. When we make changes to the building to accept the sectional doors and the spray foam that you're going to use, one of the things that we do is here is what's called a stub post header. And we'll have a column there. The purlins are every 5 feet on center, and you need to have room for this door. But that means that the end walls have a little shorter door than the side walls. And also, how do you get the coolant in here? This is where the coolant heat duct is, okay? What's standing there, notice there's a hole around it because it's blowing cold air out, and the return air is the larger hole. That's all I do. I don't have a separate register to come be the return air. If you look up here high, you're going to see a gap. Airflow can go to the units on the left and units on the right. And we do that because then we get enough airflow. This duct is typically on every second unit, not every unit. When we get to this back wall right here, I spend the extra money to put metal panel there and insulate all the way to the top, so that if this person in this unit leaves it open for 2 hours, I worry about losing the heat to go into that unit, okay? So I mitigate it. And then going this way, only 3 or 4 units do I leave open like this, and then I'll have a wall. Here is a completed 125 by 150 foot building that's lean-to and very tall. And here is one of our typical 12-inch jambs that we use, that's heavy 18 gauge. And we want to continue to use this aspect to make sure that our doors, even though in this we're not using a roll-up door because it will not pass code, it is using a sectional door. Because this building's in the state of Wisconsin that has to follow the 2018 IECC code, which means I need what's called a long tab banded roof for the insulation on the roof, And in these door jambs, I actually spray foam them inside to be able to comply to the energy code. And I really don't mind complying to the most stringent energy code because I'm going to minimize my expenses, because that's the reason people don't want to do this. They're afraid their energy costs are going to be out of sight. And I'm going to talk about how to mitigate it. The first thing, we use our standard jamb. This is actually an end wall of the building. And with that, we have to add a couple different headers here on the top to make sure that the door works, because the sectional door uses different technology than a standard roll-up door. It has to have 12 inches of clearance for this door to work to the underside of the purlin. And we want that. There is also a low riding door, but I would personally never do that because I see that the standard 12-inch one shuts better and is much tighter seal. So in my opinion, I want that because, again, I want to mitigate any energy loss to mitigate my expenses. And so now let's go inside the unit to see what changes I have to do in there. So before the sectional doors are installed, we will spray foam the door jambs and the headers. And this is a closed cell foam that you would hire that separately, spray foam that. And if you look up here in the header, you will also have that. You'll notice a couple other pieces of metal that are installed. And that is supplied by Trachte with this plate, and that's called a torsion plate. Because with a typical garage door that you have at home, you'll have a torsion bar that needs this torsion plate. So we provide that, we put it in, and then it's your job to spray foam around it. If you are in some of the cities or states that don't have the highest energy code required, all you need to do is fill this with 4-inch insulation, and you could do that. Me personally, I'd spray foam it anyway because I'm worried about my expenses. This is what you have to do for each particular unit. I am now on the sidewall of a Trachte building, and for us to accomplish having 9-foot wide doors on all our units, we have to do adjustments to our building. First of all, these columns here are normally turned a different direction. We have to turn them sideways for 2 of them. Notice me back here, this one is normal. And we turn these both sideways because that gives enough room for this sectional door to work. So we're the only ones that do this, to my knowledge, that get you the widest door possible into this unit. By wider door, you eliminate the chances of hitting the door jamb, and it's more convenient for the customer, especially if you're parking any vehicles or trailers, boats, RVs, everything else in these type of units. If you look back here, there is no vent here. They're skipping every other one. The vent's in the one next door. It all depends on what geographical area you are, how you can handle any of the HVAC systems. If anybody wants to get samples of the HVAC plans, you can contact any of your regional managers because I will give you the 4 different projects that I have done so that you can get an idea to give to your HVAC people how to actually do it in their area, because a lot of people do not understand it. I'm standing right next to a recessed entry, and this recessed entry is how you can get into the rest of the building. Now, the wall panel is taken off here because we're just showing you how this spray foam goes. It normally has 1 inch is R7, so 2 inches is really all you need to be able, because it's called continuous. And so this is all sprayed. The door is in, and then I'll add these sheets after the fact. And so this is probably the most important part to spray foam. And if you do not spray foam, you have to add a 2-inch board insulation. And that is kind of clumsy, and I know it isn't as airtight as this is. So this is what I use and why. So I picked today to make this video because there's a good amount of chaos going on. When I mean chaos, we have 3 different vendors here today working. I have my electrician, my HVAC contractor, and the door people. And so while you're going, a lot of times they have to spread out. Here's my HVAC people, Here is some of their ductworks you can see into this unit. Now, because this building is on all four sides, I use my condensing unit is going to be here on the outside of the building, right in my recessed opening. And that is nice because it's protected. It doesn't sit out here. I put bollards in front of these areas because people will try to back in here because we're going to try to get to the closest possible. I have damaged 2 of these in the 12 years I've had these. So now I put protection at the recessed entry. And now we are ready to go into our corridor to look. And down here, you'll also see my door guy who is putting in some doors as we speak. Here is the corridor system. We're going to walk through it here while it's being prepared. I have my mechanical room, one of the most important parts when you do climate control. Where is your mechanical room? Here is the mechanical room. I put it in a 5x10. Many people only do it in a 5x5. It's not finished yet. But in Wisconsin, I believe everyone should also have a dehumidifier, including with your air conditioning. Because you put so much insulation in here, the air conditioner doesn't work that much. And so you need to typically have your fan on all the time and dehumidify. Then I can make sure we keep it under 60% humidity, so therefore we will have less chance of any mold. That's what I'm afraid of. Here's a finished mechanical room. We're going to take a peek inside just to show you how it lays out. Here I leave a 5x10 unit, and the reason I do is I know there might be maintenance in every issue. I don't like jamming it into a 5x5 because then it's hard to fix anything or replace anything. I like a lot of space. So here is the unit right here, and here typically is a light. This is my dehumidifier. Turns on to make sure I get my humidity, and then I have a regular heating unit. Depends on where you are in the country, what you have to do because of your temperature ranges. There's 2 important items when you're doing climate control. What's the temperature you're going to be at, and what's the humidity level. Right here, we're at 71 degrees is our temperature, which is fine for how cool I'm making here in the summer. And the percentage of humidity says 48%, which is good. You want to be under 60. I have it set for 55% humidity, and that's when everything will kick on to make it lower than 55%. But these are the important things that you would need to look at. Normally I like to buy the door with the largest window possible so you lay light in the unit. I am a fan of the panic hardware, that's what this is called, to get in. And your cart. I like a cart storage area because I can adapt to the ADA, any ADA issues. And I like these wood carts better than the steel carts. I've changed because they actually rotate and work better. So, and normally to keep the fire department at bay, we put fire apparatus at every entrance that normally keep the fire department happy. You'll notice that there's music. I always recommend that you put music on in the corridor because the majority of the renters are women and they want to feel comfortable in these long corridors. This is called a soffit ceiling with lights, and they're LED lights. These are the ones I recommend. You have space on each side. Some people don't like that. They want to completely enclose it. But I like it because I might have to do an adjustment. I might have a customer that has to have, let's say, power in his unit or a problem, and I make sure that I can change something because it's very easy now to go down this hallway to put whatever thing I need into any of the units. So this is very traditional climate control we're looking at. And now, what are the differences? This 10x20 unit inside, for example, at this site, would cost $250. But when you're outside, 10x20 climate controlled, is $320. So he gets $70 more for that outside door here. Now that's very high. Normally it's about $50 more. Now that sectional door that you saw, that will be triple the price of a normal door. Triple to quadruple the price of a normal door. So it is more expensive to build this, but in the long term, you'll get it all paid back if you can rent it at the substantially higher rent. So now I'm on the back side of the site. You can hear the highway behind me, and here's the windows, so it's full windows that you see the units behind, and here is the panel that I used. It's called an insulated sandwich panel, and it shows no screws on the outside in the panels, so it was allowed. And we also put the sign and lighted. So now you know what the facility is and see it at night from the highway. And this is 2 inches thick and will pass any energy code. And it also never shows wrinkling, so I like the look, and it's expensive around, at this point in the world, it's about $10 a square foot. So it is expensive, but here, if you notice, this has gutters on it. The water's all draining here to the grassy area, and we have our 4x6 downspouts that are going underground into the water drainage. So this is just showing you how I complied with their problems of what it would look like for the highway and still got the visibility that we wanted. If you have a building that backs up to a green space like that, what makes the most sense, have your air conditioning units outside. And so that no one can touch it, no one gets in the way. It's way better than even the vestibule of the recessed entryway where it has to be when we're inside the building envelope like the other building is. So this is a good alternative. I am now going to show you 2 buildings that are completed. And one of the things you didn't see on the sectional doors there is what kind of lock mechanism we have. Trachte developed a lock mechanism that we put on these sectional doors. This is actually a chateau latch right here, and this stainless steel item is made by Trachte. We package it together and send it to you. Now, what happens is they have to be field mounted, and it has a double locking system, what you're used to. Because if you buy something from the door company, it's going to have its own keys and not be the standard thing that self-storage has. You store it, you lock it, you keep the key, meaning it's their lock, not my lock. One weakness this has is this is not the strongest thing in the world, but I cannot figure out a better methodology because I still want them to use the entire, this is their seal. So we put it as close as we can to the seal that they have there. So that is how I do it. And there's multiple different other ways to do it. This is just the Trachte way. Now, a handle. A lot of them will put a handle on. I like the Trachte type handle. I use that exclusively, and I keep it about 5 or 6 inches off the ground. And the reason I do that is because we're in snow country. And actually, this is the north side, which will have the worst ice and snow. So that's why I want to keep it high, so it's easy for me to lift or the customer to lift and not have that problem. Now, you've probably watched other videos of mine. One is about boat RV storage that's behind here. These are classic 12 by 40 units. They are all rented. Every one of them was rented before they were built. And now on this side, where we're having the fully climate controlled building, we are now having outside access boat RV climate control. These are 12 by 40s on this side, but they are actually with the about 11'6" high door, and they are fully climate controlled. These are all rented already before we will be open. Because why people want it climate controlled? Because here in Wisconsin, they will never have to do maintenance on their units. That is why they want them, and businesses. And also some of these, he added the feature of having an automatic door opener, and let's take a look. So in these larger units that are climate controlled and have a much bigger door, these will be 11 foot by 11'6" doors. They're gonna have an automatic door opener that he installed, okay? That they'll have buttons for and that you can change, but we'll also have the lock also. And these, it's not installed yet, will have power. And so The power, we charge a separate fee of $50 a month here. And some people don't want to pay, and then we turn it off because they're all going to be on their separate circuit breaker. But these they have to pay because it's the same circuit breaker as the power for it. And again, these are rich customers who have no problem whatsoever, whatever we charge. They want this unit, and it's normally men who rent them, and they're the man caves, man. Lastly, with these climate-controlled outside units, especially when you do the boat RV, I do recommend bollards when they can have backup space, because these are even harder to fix if you do dent a jam. So this is my preferred method. If you notice, they're two 6-inch columns. They're more than 6 inches in front of the jam so that you can replace this. And they are a little wider than the jam if you look at them. So this to me is perfect. And if you did damage one of these, we have one damaged, what we would put on, because they are filled with foam, you can put on a slip cover over them. And that is my preference of choice when you have to repair any of these. I have replaced a whole one, but they're much harder to do. But that's just another component that you might want to make sure you defend yourself so you don't have limited maintenance in the future. Well, now I'm on another site. Now this is a different site. This is in a more rural setting. The prices are cheaper than the other one we were talking about. This is a town of 5,000 people. And this building here, he was worried about costs. So he did everything the least expensive you can. And so what that means is the building is the shortest you can be, which is a 9'4" eave height. He did not spend the extra money on all the insulation, so the unit would be more protected as far as his HVAC bill. Reason for this is his, what he gets for pricing. His regular 10x20 non-climate unit is $150. Inside the hallway, 10x20 climate control is $176. And these outside are $199. And if they have power, they're $229. So it's $30 more for power. So that's substantially cheaper than the other one that was in a much more urban setting. The advantage of this locking system is you can put 2 padlocks on. This is the customer's padlock. This is his overlock. This is a Da Vinci overlock. It's easy to take off, because your computer program will tell them once they pay how to take this off themselves. So it makes it easier for remote management. In this building, he actually put in some 5x10 or 5x15 units that insulated door to the outside. Typically, the smallest unit to the outside is normally a 10x15. Not even that many 10x10s. We normally do 10x15 and greater. But you can do small ones if you choose. This owner has a green tag on it. That means it's ready to rent, cleaned out. So I'm taking the green tag out. Notice he cut his trim out. He wanted more of the throw into the unit. Now I'm gonna open the unit, and when we look inside, you are going to see that there is gaps on both sides, but also gap in the back. So he did not insulate this back wall, so to have more of a barrier between the outside air and this air. And that did save money to be able to do that, because he was worried about keeping the cost low to be able to do it. He did spray foam the jams like we have seen on the others. This building was built following an easier code as far as being energy compliant, as far as what's called the IECC code. This is where we could put 2 layers of insulation above the purlin. We call it an R32 with a thermal block. And you'll notice all the insulation is pulled tight, and it is much less expensive. To me, this is the best insulation for the buck, because it almost costs very little additional charge. And it depends on what state you're in, whether this would be allowed. When you buy a building that's only a 9-foot eave height, you have a little less room in your hallways. This is a T intersection, so they have 3 windows here, but the only downside you have when you make such a short building is the exit sign. The exit sign's pretty cheap. I like to have the whole building a foot taller, but of course that all costs money. He's had to replace it once, I know already, because some people will damage it. But this, to me, is the minimum that you can do for a building. Now that he's full, he wishes he would have done it taller, of course, but he was scared to death when he built it because he didn't have any money. Standard operating procedure in our industry. Now, I've brought you to a site that is one of the things you might be considering, and that is a partial climate-controlled building. Now, behind me is a very typical, what we've been doing for 25 years, is we have all the outside units are non-climate control, and the inside units are climate controlled. So you have a break between the outside doors and the inside doors, and then the inside is all climate. A lot of you are looking at it. Now, this is a cheaper alternative because you don't have the expensive doors on the outside. So I would never consider doing this again. This was built in 2013. To this day, I sort of regret that I didn't do outside access climate control, because this is, again, a small town, and this is a 12,000 square foot building. That's probably all I would have needed a climate control. Didn't need much more here, but I wish I would have just completely done it. Number one reason is you pay so much money to have something climate controlled. For example, in my state, your foundation has to change because we're in the north, and you have to put HVAC and gas in for heat. And if I'm spending all that money, it wouldn't cost almost any more money for the HVAC system to be out through this whole building. So I'm a believer if you're fully climate controlled or not climate controlled. And so if you notice also on the roof line, if you are going to do partially climate controlled, this roof slopes to the back. And so out here we have no water draining on the front. And that is good because in these situations you can get something called ice damming. That you go from cold to warm. And then what happens if you go this way where it's warm to cold, you can get an ice dam on the roof. And if you're ever doing partial, that is when you have to have a seamer roof because you can get an ice dam. But in this situation, you don't get ice dams. So that was built correctly, but I still, if I could get back in the Wayback Machine, I would put it into as a fully climate-controlled building. Now, if you watched any of my other seminars, I talk about building on a 1% slope. This climate-controlled building you're looking at here is built on a 1% slope. Each one of these sectional doors is not hung level. They are hung on an angle by 1 inch. And notice how it does work. So you can still incorporate 1% slopes and climate-controlled outside access. Trachte isn't the only one selling outside access climate-controlled buildings. I'm sure all the vendors can supply it. But I am at a different facility of a different vendor and just want to show you some of the differences. Now, like when I showed you that we spray foam the jamb and header, this one here isn't that. It's piecemealed by what's called a rib panel, A panel, and then trimmed out like you see behind me. And these doors are now 8 foot wide in a 10 foot, or 8 foot 8 inches wide in a 10 foot opening instead of 9 foot 0. Just showing a little difference. Now, the one thing is that if you did want to build your building on a 1% pitch that I talked about earlier that you can, this is a little more difficult to do. But it's using the same type of theory that we have with it, and they also did well. This is in snow country, having their handle taller. I consider this a very typical type of self-storage unit where they put studs around to make the framework, and then they sheeted it with, this is called A panel. One of the things I don't like, it's against the sill trim. Here's a joint here. You see screws on the outside. Just not the way I like it. But they probably did that so they can do a 1-inch styrofoam and then do R6 insulation to be able to conform, because this had to do the long tab banded roof system. Now here, it's an 8/8 door instead of a 9/0. There's a locking system, the handle's nice. And then we can go into the unit. I feel the cold air come right to me. It's fine on each side. You have openings for the air to circulate. Here, this person gets the same amount for an outside access climate controlled as inside access. He does not charge a premium. That's not how I do business, but that's the way they do. And there's another alternative that I've seen in the marketplace I'm going to show you shortly. One of the cheaper alternatives, instead of that expensive sectional door, people have done is put a regular insulated swing door in lieu of it. So instead of getting the wide door, you just probably put a 4-foot door like we show here. And so they have, at least you could get directly to your unit. This is an option, but I particularly don't buy it myself. I don't like this locking system that you can't overlock them, but it is an alternative. And they might actually, on the inside corridor, have a big door there so you can get inside access or outside access. I've seen that also in the past. This is just another alternative. You would save money. I would say it's only done 10% of the time. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video on exterior access climate control units. Now, I'm just showing you behind me is my oldest building that I own. This is a 38,000 square foot building right here. That is 400 feet long. It is built on a 1% pitch. If I get way down to the end, that's actually 4 feet higher than this end. It all drains well. I have the water draining back here. This is a unit that I've more than got my money back for the expense of the exterior doors. And one thing I can say, I built this in 2014. I have yet to ever have to auction one of these units. And the reason is because their people are keeping better stuff and they don't want me to take it back. And so that I can say, I've never done one on anyone. But you have to be in a higher income area, and there is options on it. If you have any questions, you can call me at Trachte Building Systems, and I can talk to you about any specific needs, or you can talk to any one of our regional salespeople. I want to thank you for watching this video and hope you have a great day.